Julie Wainwright. Welcome to Money Rehab.
Oh, hi, Tracy. It's good to see you. It's fun
so
being
good to
here.
See you. So, Julie, you've had an incredible career with many, many acts, and we're going to talk about all of them, including your latest business, Ahara Med. But I want to start by saying you're one of the most successful women in tech. Full stop. What do you think makes...
I don't know if that's true.
I think so.
All right. It depends on how you measure it. But yes, I've had success.
You have had a lot of success. You've run multiple public companies. You've been a founder, not just a CEO, but a founder. What do you think makes a great entrepreneur great?
Well, I could ask you the same thing. But I honestly think it's, first of all, you have to have a propensity to take risks. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to operate in gray areas. Yep. You have to come in with a very strong point of view and execute, and then right away iterate if it's not going to work. So you have to come in strong and hot and then say, okay, I was wrong, moving over this way. I think you have to recognize what talent is in other people because no one does it by themselves. You have to have the ability to raise capital if you're in the venture capital world. And certainly that's the world I know, which means taking a lot of rejections and not taking it personally and learning from the interactions, even if you learn I never want to be that person who you just talked to. Yeah. And I think you also have to have a lot of energy. I know this. You have to have a lot of energy.
Yes.
You also have to decide that's what you want to do. And what I mean by that is there is no work-life balance when you're an entrepreneur. If you're doing it, you're doing it. You have to be in, you have to be committed, and you have to see it through. And what I find fascinating, because I'm just, talking to entrepreneurs all the time, if they bring up, I want a work-life balance, I'm just like, well, why would I give you my money to make your life better? I'm going to give you my money to make more money. So you also have to recognize if you take money, you have an obligation to the investors.
Yeah, I think you're right. And as much as we would all love work-life balance, I think we both know from experience, you start a company, you owe it to your employees, your investors, and your customers to do everything in your power to make the company better all the time. So you don't really get balance during those years. What do you think it was about your life or your personality that made you feel like that kind of life without balance, with,
without balance?
All right, what made it suitable for you?
I don't know.
Or what made you suited to it?
Sure. I think the first thing is I started my career, I'm going to go way back. So I started my career in brand management at Clorox, and I was the second undergraduate they ever hired. And I was there 3 years, and I got promoted once, about ready to get promoted again. And when I looked above me, I didn't want to be those people. And what
you weren't after a big corporate job.
Well, it wasn't even that. I don't think I was that savvy. I was young. I think it was more about there were every woman in the brand organization tended to go into HR when they left brand, so none of them were general managers. They just looked like old, grumpy men to me. Think of it, though. I'm 25 years old, not even 25, because I started early. Remember, I'm the second undergraduate they ever hired. I'm living in California. In the meantime, my former boss at Clorox's wife calls me and says, why don't you join the tech world? I know this is the future because the guy in finance had smuggled in an Apple II and run VisiCalc, the predecessor to all spreadsheets, and did what I was doing by hand in seconds. I'm like, this is the world. This is where I should be. Yeah. It was exciting. It was the future. And when I looked above me, I just saw men that were most likely going to, as I got promoted, put me in HR. And I'm like, that's great for people in HR. I didn't see myself in that. I saw myself creating something. And that comes from my childhood because my dad was and ran his own art and design studio. Both my parents were artists, and they created products for other people. He did in his art and design. So he did Flintstone vitamins, bottles and packaging, promotional materials, Chevrolet ads, Kohler annual report. So, Midwest type of big brands. But we made our own products. So we had this really bad wine called the J&S wine line. And then my dad threw a tennis tournament every year, and it was called the Wainwright Invitational. And he printed up shirts before it was hard when you had to silk screen them. And it had a big brand. It had a family brand. So I just came from a place where you were creating. And then when I saw that I had an opportunity to create in the future, which for me was tech, I felt like I have to go there. That's the future. And by the way, the people when I joined that company were sort of my age. So we were we were inexperienced. We didn't know what we didn't know. And we really wanted to be part of whatever was going to happen in the future with the personal computer. So I saw that early on. I know that was a lot, but I would say my nature is toward taking risks and creating and not being held back by someone else's idea of my success.
Right. Like you
really
can't go
important.
at anyone else's pace. You have to go at whatever pace you feel inspired to
just
go.
think about this. You're starting a job, and every time you say, oh, I'm going to get promoted to that, but then they're going to want me to go here, but I'm really this person.
Do you think it's changed since then?
No. I think Clorox is better because, but do I think it's changed? Look, the numbers say it has. Let's just talk about change. It's not linear. All right. It's not linear. But I would say that there is a positive arc, but I'm not at Clorox now, but I would say in general, change in corporations, change in our laws, big changes are not a linear thing. And, but there's more laws to protect women. There's more laws to protect women's wages. When I was there wasn't even a sexual harassment law yet. So, it was a long time ago. And, women were getting sexually harassed, and we talked to each other about it and knew who to avoid. But if you went to HR, nothing was going to happen.
So you had that experience of being sexually harassed at work early in
Well,
your
not
career.
just me.
Yes. Every woman
I
you
would
knew
say
had that
yes,
experience.
but we knew who the problem people were, and we knew how to stay away from them. And we also knew that HR wouldn't do anything. So if you just think about the world I entered into, has it changed? Yes, I think it has. Has it been linear? No, it has not.
It sort of stays the same and stagnates for a while, and then there's a movement.
And goes
like
backwards. I would say, 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards. And, and I think naively, I thought it would be linear. And when I started, I didn't really realize that women were second-class citizens, and it was new for us to be in the workforce because I thought, of course we can do it. We're smart. We're ambitious.
Well, so one of the big reasons that organizations form like this, where there's disproportionate power with the men and some unfairness and sexual harassment tendencies, is because historically the leadership has always been men. And that's usually because women don't raise as much capital to build.
Oh, now you're back in
companies.
the VC world.
Yeah,
but I mean, this is corporate world. Look, if you just look at the wave of women coming into the workforce and the grand scheme of time, it hasn't been that long. And it has redefined everything. But when you look at venture capital, the percent of money going to women has actually declined.
Yes.
And I don't see that changing because there's now a wave that where inclusion, or at least the semblance of inclusion, has gone the other way, and perhaps it swung too far. Yes. So, no, the venture capital world is still very male. Yeah. It's changed a little bit, but the big funds are still run by men. And but hope all you need is a couple women doing great things. Wow. And then things do change. It's not impossible. I don't want to. Obviously, I raise money. You raise money. Yes. I think in my lifetime I've raised over $1 billion. I added it up, Julie, for fun.
That's crazy.
It is.
Okay, let's talk.
So
about
anyway,
that.
so it's, and if I can do it, anyone. I mean, I went to Purdue. I didn't go to Stanford or Harvard.
Yeah, same. I went to an art school.
So you are the outlier. That is not normal.
I tend to be the outlier. Let's talk about. So you've raised over $1 billion in your career. Let's zoom in a little bit on the phase of your career where our paths crossed when you founded the RealReal. Can you tell the audience? I feel like everybody knows what the RealReal is, but for those who don't, can you tell everybody what the RealReal is?
So simply stated, the RealReal is the place where you buy and sell luxury consignment. On a more sophisticated level, the company was set up to provide a lot of service to people for getting their product into. It's not a self-posting site. The RealReal consolidates product at 2 different op centers, at least 3 different op centers. At least it did when I was there. I left 2 years ago. And at those op centers, things are inspected, they're authenticated, and the RealReal controls the pricing.
Yes.
And it takes things like fine jewelry and watches. The largest group of gemologists, I think, in the world work at the RealReal. Handbags, clothing, a little bit of art and home. And so for men and women, the fashion. So, and that concept was, when I introduced it, was completely new. No one had actually focused on the luxury end of the market. No one had taken possession unless you were in a brick and mortar store. No one had leveraged technology to help set the right pricing. And authentication was an ad hoc consideration.
Yes. Well, and I heard you say it was not a self-listing site. So for anybody who doesn't know, I had a website called Tradesy. It was a direct competitor to the RealReal. We were really, I think, maybe two of the 3 largest in the luxury resale space, and it was a self-listing site. So on our site, our sellers listed their item directly, sort of like you would on eBay, and we virtually authenticated. So early on, our companies were sort of on a similar trajectory, and then the RealReal pulled ahead.
Yes.
Why do you think that was?
Oh, it's really, I mean, there's multiple reasons. One is my vision was different than your vision, to be honest. The second thing is I had access to capital.
Yes.
And I always focused on getting the product in and didn't worry about demand. So consequently, and built up, so focused on getting all the supply. So, and I built up a big infrastructure. And I do think the luxury customer and consignor wanted a level of service that your model couldn't deliver.
Yep.
I know that you think the stores supercharged us. They did and didn't. I mean, I have to say the stores were when we first opened a store, which
by the stores you mean so the RealReal.
The Real had brick and mortar stores, and we opened our first store in Soho, I think in 2017, after a pop-up. And the pop-up in Manhattan did change perception.
Yes.
It did change people's perceptions. It was in the data. Yeah. So the data showed that we changed people's perception. And how do I know that? People that had previously shopped only online and then went into the store, not only did their average order size go up, their propensity to consign and buy went up. So it had a halo effect.
Yes.
And then the Soho store after the pop-up was next, same thing. The LA store on Melrose, also big boon. So those were local things that happened.
And I remember reading something at the time that said that for people who shopped online, if they were within a 5-mile radius of a store, their conversion rate went up. Was that true also?
Their average order size went up.
Average order value went up.
So I think the biggest problem, the company was supply limited.
Okay.
So, you can only get so much, and it was, it's always constantly about getting new product. But having said that, their propensity to consign went up.
Mm-hmm.
Because it made it even easier. So we would come to your house, but then you could also drop it off.
Right.
So if you're looking at
cities where you have dense populations,
exactly,
and a lot
it's just
of
easy.
Near a store. Yes,
it's easy.
Totally makes sense.
So yes, it did change the economics, but it also cost more money, and it created. Here's the interesting thing: when you post a thing online, it's also in the store. So it was also just like at Tradesy, we had one of everything. Every product's unique.
Yes.
So it created a technical challenge.
Yes.
It added another level of urgency, but the infrastructure to get those stores going was not trivial. So
I think it's
I mean,
also
not trivial. So,
yeah.
the trade-off wasn't clear when we first got started, and the model had to evolve.
And I think it's easy to look at a business like the RealReal or Tradesy and think, oh, they're doing e-commerce. But it's not e-commerce. It's a two-sided marketplace.
It's a marketplace.
Which is 10 times more complex than, so a SKU of one business is really hard to run.
Especially when you're taking possession. Yes.
Yeah, well, yes,
Yes.
which we didn't do. And we had other challenges like when a seller shipped an item directly to a buyer, what if they didn't put the right item in the box?
Yeah,
And
I mean,
solving for
honestly,
that
yeah.
was
So that
difficult.
we were
Yeah.
trying to solve for that not happening.
Yes.
Which doesn't mean we didn't misship things. But I mean, the goal was if you're paying $400 for something, or any money really, that's a luxury good, and you expect to get the right thing at the right time and to make sure it's authentic. The other thing we did, we got people to think about recirculating their goods, because if you bought it on the RealReal, you should be able to resell it when you're done with it.
Right.
And
in
so,
theory, you can have a free, like a net neutral cost wardrobe.
very
You're
close,
constantly
very
selling
close.
it, right?
It depends how long you sit on it and how bad the usage is. But yes.
Yes. Well, and also I think the RealReal and Tradesy before we sold it can be very addictive because it's SKU of one. You have that timer on the shopping cart, which I know you came up with early and it's brilliant. It gives you a sense of like, oh, I'm going to lose this if I don't get it.
Do you want to know why we did that?
Why?
We had to put it, all right, another skill for an entrepreneur, you're always solving the most important problems.
Yes.
And one of the things we wanted to see happen were sales, no kidding. And people were hoarding. So literally someone would get on the site early and they would put 60 or 80 things in their cart.
Sense.
And they would leave them in the cart for hours. And we're like, and then, and especially, so if it's still a problem, you still don't want that to happen, obviously. But in the beginning, we were running sales 3 times a week with only 60 or 70 products.
I remember this. It
and
was
a
like
sale.
we were like the first to do a drop. Now that's the whole thing. But I remember when the RealReal was,
Well,
was
that
like,
was
oh, it's
by-
a RealReal day.
That was by necessity, not by design, because we didn't have enough product. We wanted to aggregate the product under themes and make sure that it, we actually had enough product to execute on that theme. And so if people come to the site and there's no product to buy, everything's on hold, then you don't have customers.
Yeah,
so right away, literally within 1 day of doing that, I'm like, we got to put a timer on that cart. And it never
I would have written a
changed.
script that just said, sweep everything into my cart and leave it there,
Well, something was going. People were doing that. Yeah, so we're like, we will never have a sale, and then they'd hoard everything. Then the customers were gone, and like they'd buy one thing. We're like, oh, this is not good.
Okay, so I have a fun question for you, considering that we spent the better part of a decade as leaders of organizations in the same category and as competitors. How did you think about the competition when you were building your business?
Never worried about you guys at all. And there's so many reasons for it because everyone thought they were a competitor. No one was doing what we were doing. So no one was taking possession. The company at one point, I don't know where they are now, under me, we had 450 people in the field picking up products.
Yes.
No one had the capability to open stores because you didn't take up possession. No one was really doing the level. Fine jewelry and watches were a key component of the business, about 34-35% of the sales. You cannot authenticate a piece of jewelry online, and nor can you understand the jewelry, nor can you really authenticate a watch. And if you think you can, you're probably selling fakes.
Yeah.
So our product mix was different. Our service level was different. Our ability to market via our stores was different. And I always thought I was in competition with ourselves, and it was a capital-intensive business. And how do I actually continue to raise capital to keep the business going?
So was not thinking about the competition something that a way that you operated throughout your career?
No, not at all. But, this was a unique offering in a unique space. And no, you have to be aware of the competition, but we had a moat around the business, and it was ours to lose. It was always ours to lose.
Well, so how much money did you raise for the RealReal?
I'd have to add it up, but it was in the hundreds of millions.
I mean, that's part of so very few women in tech raise hundreds of millions of dollars. And then I'm not spoiling this because people probably know, but you eventually had an IPO. You took the company public.
Right.
That is also very, very rare. Very few.
Yeah.
female
So
founders
that's,
get
it
there.
was sad. I think when we did it, I believe it was an executive at NASDAQ said, you're the 23rd woman founder to take a company public ever.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you think, oh, great. And then you think, oh, isn't that sad?
It's
very
really
sad.
Really sad. I know a handful of women who've taken companies public, and the one thing they all have in common is that when you shut the door and you start to talk about what was it like raising enough capital and pushing a company through all those phases of growth, they have a lot of horror stories. So will you tell us some of your behind closed doors horror stories about fundraising and building your company? Like, what are things that you haven't talked about publicly?
Oh, I think you're going to have to wait for the book. The book's coming out in June. The book is coming out in June of next year. It's called Time to Get Real.
Okay.
And it's right now, it's with a publisher in their legal department. And let me tell you, my focus was a little different in writing this. I wanted to walk people through how the RealReal was built year on year. So it has this sense of urgency. And then I did have to weave in lessons, but I wove in those lessons as I was learning them.
Okay.
So I walked through it, and it's a fast-paced read. My favorite book of all times for business is Shoe Dog. And the reason I love Shoe Dog is I love it. I love it. And I love it for multiple reasons. One is I thought I knew the story. I didn't. I don't know why I thought I did, because Nike's a big company. So I guess, and you felt the struggle of getting Nike to become Nike.
Yes.
And I felt like I was along the ride. You know, I was in the car even.
So that's what we can expect from
I hope so.
Yeah,
You know,
great.
it's in
When is it coming out?
and not until June of next year. It takes that industry needs that industry needs a reshuffle. So it is coming out. There are a lot of stories. I can tell you sort of a fun one, because you know, it just shows. All right, remember we were talking about, yes, we were doing drops. Well, we were doing drops because we didn't have enough product. So in the early days, we were in a strip mall that was it was a bad strip mall.
Like for your office?
For the office. So when I say early days, literally the first few months, and it lasted a little longer than it was. But I needed to rent a warehouse, and I got a railroad card style warehouse. So you walk in, and this crunchy brown carpet that was really gross, that literally crunched when you walked on it, into the area where we processed goods. And then the middle was the photography area, and there were little storage alcoves off of that. But in order to take the right photos on the mannequin, the photographer had to open the one door to the bathroom and step into the bathroom to take pictures of the photos. And then the back area had a roll-up door and was a proper warehouse with a loft.
Okay.
So, but the whole thing was maybe 3,000 square feet. And this is how we got started. I thought, well, we have to start somewhere. And I was floating the money. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. All right, so we get it going. No VC money yet, all right? Just friends and family. No VC money.
Angel investors.
Oh, well, one who was an amazing entrepreneur himself, Payam Zamini, one angel investor. So we're working in this, and we realized we had this. I had this idea where I need to get to aggregators of products. Well, who aggregates products? Stylists, because they know a lot of people, and those people buy a lot from them. So I went down to LA and developed a stylist program, promoted that, went to New York, found stylists, pulled them together, promoted the program, tried some direct mail. And I'm thinking, this is great. We're going to get tons of product rolling in. And of course, nothing's happening. All right, nothing.
Nobody was interested in selling?
The program didn't seem to be effective. We weren't getting calls. We'd be checking in. They're like, nothing.
And what year
yet.
was this? Around
2011.
Oh,
so
wow.
I'm talking beginning.
Yep.
All right, so no product. And then we're running the sales. It's going into the summer. And I'm like, we are so screwed because everyone we knew had given this product. We tried some direct card marketing that was sort of percolating in. So
What's direct card marketing?
Oh, through the post office, literally a postcard.
Oh, like
explaining the service.
Did you choose zip codes with like ultra high
Well,
net
we
worth
did,
people?
but we didn't. If someone in LA, we didn't have a team down here yet. So if someone in LA would have picked up on that, we had to fly someone down to get it and drive a U-Haul back. All right, so we're really pins and needles,
Scrappy early days.
And we get a call from a stylist. And I don't think I can mention the celebrity, but she
come
said,
on, Julie.
I don't think I can because she didn't want the sale.
It out after.
She did not want the sale public when she did it. She subsequently did do public sales on the RealReal. But we get a call. X person wants to clean out her warehouses.
Warehouses?
Yes.
Was it Celine Dion?
I'm not. Oh, we're not going to go through the
Did you
guessing
see the documentary about Celine Dion where she
just-
has warehouses of costumes?
All right. Well, it turns out it's a thing in fashion.
Okay.
All right, not just celebrities. And this literally got the call at 3:00 at night, 3:00 in the afternoon. Can you be there tomorrow morning? I'll text you the address.
The answer is always yes.
Always yes.
It has to be yes.
So employee number one, Rati Levesque. At that time, Rati saw
Rati's now she's
CEO? Now the president.
Okay.
All right. So flew down and with an intern. All right. The next morning. Mm-hmm, so we had one intern in Georgia. All right, so Georgia and Rati fly down, rent a U-Haul, which, I'm sure Rati will be mad I say this, but she's not the best driver. At least she wasn't at the time.
Oh, I get that. Nicole always tells me I'm not the best driver,
so her car back in San Francisco was beaten up. I'm like, I don't know about her driving this U-Haul. Anyway, they go to this person's warehouse, and I'm trying to, talk to them all day. They're like, yeah, there's a warehouse. We're working it. This person then decided she wanted to try on everything one more time before consigning.
Of course. You can't be sure you want to let go of it until you do a personal fashion show.
A pickup that probably would have taken 8 hours was now extended to 2.5 days.
Wow.
Which meant I had to call the intern, who was a high school girl's mom, and say, do you mind if Georgia spends the night in LA?
Did she have to miss school?
She was a summer break, but she was underage, so I had to get him a hotel room. And I had to, and then all of a sudden, they go in, and then I said, do you want me to fly someone down there? Because I'm answering the phone, I'm skewing product, I'm doing everything. I can't leave. Someone's got to be at the office. And she's like, remember, this is very early days. And she's like, send someone down. So I sent my boyfriend down. He's driving it back. All right. So then they're like, you know what? It just wasn't that great. So they're calling. She goes, all right. So it was a total punk. She gets there, opens the U-Haul, tons of boxes, tons.
But nothing good?
Everything was good.
Oh.
Not a lot of handbags, but everything was,
Great.
She was totally punking me. But here's what happened. And this person's so little. It was like a 000. Turns out a lot of people wear that size. So it's got us through the summer. The success of that program meant that stylist gave us more product from our clients. Another one did. Then we put someone in LA. And there it started. So that was
amazing.
That's you said it's more complicated. Yes, because we were a marketplace. We couldn't just call up a vendor and say, I want more.
No, you're constantly managing the supply and the demand, the sellers and the buyers. It's such a complicated business. And it's so funny to hear you talking about these kind of scrappy early days, because after that phase, after you had a warehouse with a crusty carpet and
it was so bad, and the French guy stepping into the toilet to photograph things.
So after all of that, the business grew. Like you said, you raised hundreds of millions of dollars. You took the company public. What did it feel like to ring the bell?
There really isn't that thing. It's a simulation, so that's too bad.
I didn't know
that. Yeah. I mean, we were with NASDAQ. We weren't on the New York Stock Exchange. You hit a button, but it's already done. It's like you're doing it. It doesn't really. No, but I'll tell you what's fun. Confetti comes down, so it does make you feel good.
That makes up for it a little bit, yeah.
And everyone in the company had stock. Anyone that had been with the company 5 years more were part of the IPO. and were there with me, standing with me. And honestly, they said they have never seen an IPO like this.
Really?
Yes.
Why? In what way? What
Well,
made
first
it
of all, it
unique?
was inclusive.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Yeah.
So people had their kids there. People had been there for a long time, whether you were in the ops center working at an hourly job
Yep.
or you were an executive. Also, I'm sure we were the most stylish. There's
I'm
no
sure.
doubt in my mind
Oh
we
my
were the
goodness,
most
there
stylish.
was never so much Gucci on the Nasdaq stage.
No, there wasn't.
Wow.
And you know, when you walk in you've been into NASDAQ, right?
Yeah.
All right. So when you walk in, they have like the fraternity of all the people that have actually ever done this, all, shots of all the men. And I'm like, let's get my picture up there next time I walk in there,
Julie.
because there were no women on the fraternity board.
Really? Okay,
No.
so on that particular stock exchange, was that the one that had 23 women in
No,
of
that
all
was
time?
overall. That was overall. It was both.
On the
It was
NASDAQ,
anybody
almost
taking
nobody.
a company public.
Wow.
But then there's been women since then, so that's good.
Yeah, it does seem like more women's companies are getting to IPO, even though, like you said,
Not lately, but you're right.
Well,
And
no,
then we had a
lately
little,
nobody.
we had like Bumble come out, I think, right
Yeah,
after that,
yeah.
and that did well, women led. But before me was Katrina
Yeah.
Lake with Stitch Fix.
Yep, and then also my friends over at Figs had a great IPO.
Figs is a great product,
That
yeah.
was wonderful.
Yep.
So we're seeing it more and more.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. Little cracks.
Yeah, and so you took the company public. Matt, it is the greatest victory for a founder to do that, to be
It's
able
fabulous.
to from zero to IPO.
Well, all right, let's just take a step back.
Mm-hmm.
If you take money from people, which I took a lot of money, you have to have a vehicle for them to get it out.
Totally.
It's
yes.
as simple as that.
Yes. You
And
either have to sell the company or take it public.
That's it.
Yeah.
You really don't. You only have two paths.
Yes.
Or if you shut it down, you're sort of in hot water for a long
Yeah,
time.
that's not the pathway.
So and that's a bad end.
Mm-hmm.
So that I find founders not only they don't always understand that
Really?
you are obligated to actually return money once you take it in. So no one was going to buy the RealReal, so our path was going public.
Yeah.
And my goal was when the company got to at least $1 billion in top line sales, we should be ready, because it was becoming highly predictable.
Yes.
And we were.
And this
That
was
year
like
we had $1 billion.
2019,
We
yeah.
had $1 billion in top line sales. It was predictable. And then COVID hit.
And then what happened?
And then,
Everything was totally normal after 2019, right?
well, COVID hit.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so you were still running the company. Now it's a public company,
Right.
which means that you have to report to the
Quarterly,
whole world how
quarterly.
you're performing, right? It's different than when you're a private company.
Well,
Nobody knows your business.
Well, but except you still report. I mean, you still have
report
a
to your
board of
board.
directors who.
But when you're public, you report publicly. So
Right. Well, the mechanism, in my view, isn't that different. If you're running a company, you're still having board meetings, preparing financials,
Yes.
reporting. You better have checks and balances on those financials, and you're reporting into the board of directors. So
yes.
Right.
Yes. You just have sort of fewer eyes on you. If you have a bad quarter and you're private, your circle knows about it, but the whole world doesn't know
yeah,
about
everyone
it.
talks that, but you're right. It's a different. I agree. I'm just being
Yeah.
a little cantankerous, but I don't disagree. But look, the RealReal was growing 40%.
Mm-hmm.
In
Pre-COVID.
in January of 2020 versus year ago, same period year ago. February, same number, 40% versus year ago. March, San Francisco and New York were early people to force shutdowns.
I remember.
And March went from first, I think they shut it. In fact, I know they shut it down on March 12th. First 10 days, growing 42%. March is a good month.
March is a good month for seasonality.
It's very good. Very good. People are in the mood to
Yeah,
start
people
thinking
shop a
about
lot.
spring, and
Yeah.
they're thinking again. Soon from that day, that month of March ended at minus 46% versus year ago.
Well, because your warehouse is shut down, right? So you couldn't physically ship product.
Well, we couldn't. No, demand dried up. Demand came back in April, but it was bigger than that. We couldn't pick up product. And we were allowed to operate in New Jersey.
Which was your
Where
biggest
processing
warehouse.
at the time was the biggest op center. But we weren't in the Bay Area. We still had an op center in the Bay Area, and we weren't. We clearly, I mean, if people lived in New York, it was a terrible situation in New York. New York was the single largest market for the RealReal, and we couldn't pick up we couldn't pick up product. So usually, all right, so when you think about a marketplace, let's just talk about dynamics. When you have buyers and sellers, you're not a way station. You are a way station, you're not a warehouse. So if your product isn't selling, then your sellers are unhappy, and then you may not have the right buyers. But if your products don't sell for your sellers, they aren't going to give you more product. So you need to have a rhythm, and the RealReal developed a very specific rhythm through optimal pricing, not best pricing, optimal pricing.
Where sellers could expect that
Within
after a
90
month or
days,
two,
within 90 days, 90% plus would sell through.
And then COVID was like,
Well, COVID stopped that, but it picked up again.
okay.
And oddly enough, by the end of April, when, it was 2 weeks, then we were like in it, we didn't know how long we'd be. By the end of April, this was sort of weird. People started buying handbags and shoes and then other things, but a lot of handbags and shoes and jewelry. Well, all right, let's go back to the necessity to keep product flowing through. So 90% of the product flows through in a quarter, which means by the end of, if you think April, May, June, the inventory is being depleted very quickly, but it's not being added back because we couldn't pick up product in California. Well, really, the only states that really acted like COVID didn't happen was Florida, Arizona. Arizona, not a great big market for the company. Florida, good, but not of the caliber of the other states. And a little bit of Newport in California, which wasn't big enough. So, you had these little pockets where, like, you walk in and you're like,
these
wow.
are, by the way, all of your more politically conservative markets, areas where
they didn't shut down.
People didn't do COVID.
No, they didn't have the shutdown restrictions. Yeah. So the company was in trouble.
And how was your work-life balance during this phase?
Oh, well, look, it was surreal because also we had, supposedly they were short sellers. So we had one operating op center that's in New Jersey. And at that time we had a couple in New Jersey, one in Secaucus and one in Perth Amboy. We had the Bay Area one that we needed to leave anyway, the Bay Area, because we'd grown out, but shut down. In fact, when we were just trying to move product to New Jersey so we could process it and give people their returns.
Yeah, even that, right?
No, the sheriff showed up and put it like, we're going to throw you guys in jail. I'm like, oh, come on. Anyway, we finally got the product
There will be no shoes and purses transported.
Oh, no, the whole thing was nuts. So
it was a bit crazy.
We had to open a new op center, which we got going in Phoenix. And then we had some odd calls coming into the Perth op center from people saying we were, killing our employees, not following protocol, which wasn't true. But I'm on the phone with the mayor. I'm on the phone with the head of police in New Jersey saying, walk through, we're following protocols. Are these calls coming on in-state? Are they coming in, or out of state? They were all out of state. So it was a short seller.
That's wild. So a short seller meaning somebody who had bet in the stock market against the company's success was now putting their hand on the scale and trying to influence whether
we
COVID
could process
would
products. Oh, it completely disrupted, but they were trying to make it even further.
Even worse. It's so stressful. And I think it's really helpful for like a lot of our audience here, they're early stage founders or they're young women in business. And I think it's so helpful for them to hear that even when you get to the point that your business is a household name and it's big and it's a public company, you're still dealing with...
Oh, no, this was a nightmare because we could... So we had to start buying product, which the quality of the product was good.
And where were you buying product from?
From some directly from the brands, because remember, they couldn't sell their product either.
Totally.
Some directly from the brands, some from people that resell for the brands, a product that couldn't move. So the caliber of the product was great because it never made it on the shelves.
Yes.
But the margin was horrific.
We did the same exact thing during COVID.
What a
and found
nightmare.
The same exact thing.
What a nightmare, huh?
Yeah.
The whole thing was...
It was tough.
Yeah, it was
turned
really
out
tough.
resale was better than off-price in the
Well, yes. I mean, well, off price, I don't know if you've ever heard me say this publicly, but it's like if it didn't sell once, it's not going to sell the second time.
Totally.
This is the beauty of resale. If someone
It's the
bought it
stuff people
once,
wanted.
then people will buy it again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Okay, so
That was a lot. That was a
COVID
lot.
was a lot.
Yeah,
and
it was
so
a lot.
you took the company through COVID, through some of its toughest times. And then in 2022,
Yes.
you left the company.
Well, I got fired by the board.
Oh, okay. We're talking about it. Julie, tell us what happened.
I mean, look, it sort of went, there's a couple of different things that happened. In my world, the board of directors I grew up with were the venture capitalists. When I say grew up with the company, the venture capitalists and all early investors, except from one, actually left, and the board had to be. I had to rebuild the board and make recommendations to rebuild the board.
So after you went public, you got a whole new set of board members,
except for one.
Yeah,
and that one never sold.
Oh, so they held on to their stock.
Right. And
Most
the price had
sell.
gone down. But I would say a couple different things. And this is really good advice for anyone choosing a board. When you get money from people, and let's say you only have one term sheet or two, the investors sit on the board.
Yes.
So you don't choose your board, you choose your money source. Later on, you can make recommendations. And I always thought it would be great to have key areas of subject matter expertise on the board.
Yes.
It turns out that that's one criteria, but the overriding criteria should have been shared values. And it also should have been more entrepreneurial focused, because the RealReal was still an entrepreneurial-led company and was still a very baby company.
Right. So you were a public company, but you still had a lot of room to grow, and it still needed to be run like
I think shared
business.
values instead of area of expertise. I think shared values is actually more important than
for
area of
member.
for a board member.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't go that way.
Okay.
And I would say that I had one disgruntled board member who didn't sell his stock, who, in my opinion, believed he knew more than anybody else about how to run a company. I also had new members on the board, and there was a huge disconnect, and I was busy running the company, and I would say lack of shared values. And they came after me and they fired me. And the rationale was I didn't hit my numbers during COVID. But it might have been
you
because
should have opened those warehouses.
It could have been also because I told one key board member who I believe was out to get me, who had a plan for the company to basically, in the board meeting, to F off, and he wasn't going to ruin the company. And then one of the female board members, who they were almost all females, and stood up and said, "You're not a good leader. You can't talk to a board member that way." And I said, "Well, I can when that board member's lying." And it sort of went downhill from that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what happened. Now, I have to say, it was sad. It was very sad. I think the key lesson is values matter.
And what were the values that you felt like you were bringing to the table that your board didn't share?
And it's also a way of operating. So let's just talk about the difference between a corporate citizen who grew up in the corporate world versus an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of differences.
So corporate citizens tend to work on politics. They tend, especially if you're a woman, there tends to be room for one woman at a top. So they really aren't necessarily people that you would even want to have a drink with. Politics matter more than results.
When you say politics, just so that people understand what you're talking, you don't mean like.
Well,
in
it's
the
very, let's
world.
just say, no, I'm talking about within a
politics.
corporation. Let's just say you're working in a multi-billion-dollar company. And it could be great training for you. Are what you do going to make the biggest difference in that company, or who you know, and maybe who you suck up to, or whose team you get on going to make the biggest difference?
Right.
It is very hard to turn. So politics matter. In a startup, it really is, it's much more of a meritocracy. You can't hide. Right. Your results matter. And hopefully the management recognizes it is a meritocracy, but at the end of the day, the data doesn't lie And every person in a startup, as you know, is so important.
Yes.
And how, and getting the right way to measure their performance is important, and making sure that you get out any bias in the way they're paid. All of that's important. I'm not saying meritocracy doesn't exist in a corporation. It's much harder to find because it's much harder to measure. So if you have people that grew up in a political world, meritocracy doesn't matter. If you have people that knew structure and they liked, they weren't big risk takers and they like things, rolling along in a methodical way, that's not what a startup looks like. It's messy, it's meaty, it's risk taking. If you have people that grew up in a world where they wanted to be the smartest person in the room instead of a collaborative person, which my board was collaborative, most successful venture capital thing, businesses are collaborative. It's a hierarchical model in the corporate world. Yeah. In a great startup, it's a collaborative world. Collaboration makes better ideas. So you have, so think about what I said at the beginning of the story. I didn't want to be the people at Clorox, and all of a sudden I have people like them on my board who think they know and they're hierarchical. And it's the same thing, like you can't talk to a board. Of course I can talk to a board member like that because what they're saying is wrong and will hurt the company, and it was a lie.
And
but
so
see, and I because
you brought
I
people on for their subject matter expertise, but it turned out that because they had spent so many years in the
it's
corporate
a huge
world,
disconnect. And I would say there's two problems. One is it was heavily it was all corporate except this one person, and that one person again lost their and I just think it's the wrong thing. I think that we need to look at choosing board members differently. And I think it's really critical. But if you're raising capital, you get that board member. And that board member may also be toxic. But I didn't have that experience prior. The board members, the original investors, except for one, on the RealReal were pretty remarkable.
So you had a great board that
except
really supported
for one,
you.
Except for one. Right.
And
I think that person would have supported. He wouldn't have messed up and gotten off the board, and he blew it. So, everybody answers to somebody. So I'm sure, he messed up. He should have gotten his money out. He didn't.
So you were fired from the company that you started,
I was.
You built.
I was.
I mean, what did that feel like?
Oh, come on. What do you think it felt like? It was very
horrible.
dark. Yeah, of course.
And so when that happened, were you able to speak publicly about how it went down? And
it's your story, so you can always talk. I don't think it benefits me to talk that publicly about it. It's in the book, though, of course.
How do you think the company is doing now?
Look, if you follow their financial results, they're not in a growth mode. Their customer base shrunk by over 9%. Their average order size went way up, which I know they're very proud of. I think it's dangerous, especially in a bad economy. I'm not there day to day. I would say I really can't comment beyond that, but the stories I know are the stories I know. People call me, and I will just go on record. Rati does not call me, but they've fired the CFO, who also was the new CFO in the company. And, look, I'm not there, so I'm not going to say anything good. I hope it goes on. It was a labor of love. And honestly, it's a great service. We really changed the fashion world. We got people thinking about recirculating goods. We raised awareness of the issue of unused clothing or, really poorly made clothing going to landfills, which is for microplastics, which goes right into your drinking water. And the fact that these clothes don't break down, and they can be in landfills for over 100 years, just leaching really bad chemicals versus buying good things and recirculating them.
Well,
we democratize luxury, which you help do too.
Yes.
So all of those things are great. Honestly, and most of the time, it was so much fun. It was so much fun. Just fun.
Yeah, I think that's also something that gets lost in the story of all the massive business success is that there was a sustainability mission for these businesses. And the idea, particularly for those of us in luxury, was you don't have to buy cheap, fast fashion that's disposable. You can afford really beautiful clothing and then pass it on when you're done with it.
And recirculate it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think
Yes.
that I like to think that we completely changed the game in terms of making resale cool. Like I remember.
Well, that was my goal. Look,
Yeah.
I knew when I first launched the RealReal that if I didn't make it really relevant and cool and make sure you look good and really have an image with it, it wasn't going to work.
Totally.
And so my
Totally.
goal was to change perception.
Yes. And I
And-
think luxury customers at the time that we were getting started kind of turned up their noses at used clothing. And now everybody's
Well,
into
they
it.
did and they didn't. The younger generation, everyone likes a deal. So they did and didn't.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I said, everyone likes a deal. So, and the other thing is for the first time, people could actually, when they bought something, they had a way to monetize it afterwards in a
Right.
way that they didn't have to go to a brick and mortar store and drop it off.
Mm-hmm.
And the value of the internet, which you can have millions of customers look at it. The price is, so the speed of sale is always faster, and the price is always the price the market will bear.
Totally. Totally.
That's the marketplace value system.
Well, I think I'm glad that you shared the story of both how you started and how you departed the company. I think it's really helpful for people to know that even when they see big success stories from the outside, there are a lot of ups and downs. There are a lot of challenges right from the first day till the last day. Now you're building something new.
I am. So it's so exciting. So one of my passions has always been nutrition. And I started a company with a medical doctor about 2 years ago called Ahara. It was pretty clear to me when we got in the market, we've been in the market about 1 year, that really what people kept asking us for was help with losing weight.
Mm-hmm.
And even we're selling into corporations, they would say, do you have a track on weight loss? We certainly did, but not the track they wanted. So we did, and we still do. We have a metabolic track to how to speed up your metabolism, foods that are best for you. But really what they wanted in corporations and what our customers was telling us, no, we want to understand what's going on in the weight loss drug world, and we want to know how to eat if we choose to go in that route. So just...
So like Ozempic.
So like an
and that?
Ozempic or a Wegovy. And so just 2 weeks ago, we launched Ahara Med. So I spent a lot of time, along with some of the key people working with me, interviewing doctors' groups that are specialized in weight loss and can help someone. Number one. Number two, we went to state licensed compounders because the drugs in the compounding are similar. The active ingredients are the same. So they use the same active ingredients, but they compound them differently. But the same active ingredients in an Ozempic or a Wegovy are compounded. Now, let's talk about the advantage. You have
Can
a doctor's
explain
group.
to people what is compounding?
Compounding means they're actually made not in mass production
Okay.
with a
In
big
like a
brand.
small
They're
pharmacy.
small batch.
Small batch. Yeah.
And there isn't a drug shortage. There is a delivery mechanism shortage. So the big brands use special pens, not that obscure the fact that you're putting
For,
a
like, the
needle in you.
Ozempic where you kind of stamp yourself. in
Well,
the
you
butt or
do,
the
but it
stomach
doesn't
with it.
maybe look
Yeah.
like a needle. What I decided after talking to my investors that we should own the compounding pharmacies. We should have the relationships with the doctors. And really importantly, we should work with the insurance companies to make sure that we could get nutrition consulting through registered dietitians approved with the insurance companies so we could be there hand in glove with the user and give people it feels complimentary dietitian consulting when you start on the drug. So we offer dietitian consulting, the compounded drugs, which are about anywhere from 70 to 80% off the retail prices.
How much does it cost per month to get
So
those
something
compounded?
like an Ozempic equivalent is $200 a month.
Wow, and that includes having a nutritionist who helps tell you
That
what to eat.
includes having a dietitian to help you. 1 month we're doing is free. Right now, Aetna and United Health have already said they're covering the expense. And we're just waiting on Anthem and Blue Shield.
Wait, so for a lot of people, your insurance company will pay if you go to Ahara Med and you get
So
drugs
you
to help
sign up
lose
for
weight.
a dietitian. I'm calling it complimentary because it is.
Okay.
All right, your insurance will cover it. Something like 89 million people are covered by those two insurance companies. So you can get dietitian consulting on as you start on your weight loss journey. You have a great medical doctor who is really great in telehealth, who's focusing on weight loss, and a compounded drug from a state licensed pharmacy. And you get started with $195, and it is absolutely imperative that people combine dietitian consulting with this because, first of all, 40% of the U.S. is considered obese, according to the latest stats from the NIH. 40.3%. Of those, 10% are considered morbidly obese. All right, so a huge population. And obese people tend to be malnourished. Also, when you get off the drugs, whether they're compounded or branded, people can gain the weight back because they didn't know how to eat in the first place.
Guidance.
So our goal is to help people along that line. And also there is muscle loss with this. Help them get the right protein amount, check in on their weightlifting, exercise. So when they get off the drugs, they don't have a metabolic disorder. Maybe they can actually get rid of their type 2 diabetes if it was weight induced. I know that it absolutely will go. Blood pressure will be good. I mean, it is awesome. I'm so excited to offer this.
Yeah, I feel like everyone I know who's been on the GLP-1s, they're like, I don't know what to eat. I'm not getting enough protein. So the idea that they could get a nutritionist for free to help them with that is amazing.
And people get it, let's say you're on it for 6 months, and let's say you've lost 40 pounds, highly possible. Or maybe it took you 8 months, but 40 pounds, game changer. You wear different, you feel different. Your blood pressure is probably better. It's just everything gets better. Everything gets better, except the probability of you gaining all that weight back without proper gut is very, very high.
Oh, wow.
Unless you learn how to change your diet and eat for your health.
People don't shrink their stomach while they're on the drug.
No.
They tend to gain the weight back when they go
No, they're
off
not
if
as
they don't have
hungry.
guidance.
So, it is good to get good nutrition guidance. Micro and macronutrients are really important. And to get those habits set up while you're on the weight loss drug so then you can continue when you leave.
Well, Julie, that sounds amazing. I have no doubt that Ahara Med is going to be another massive success for you. Before we go, will you play a game of Never Have I Ever?
Oh, no.
With me?
All right. Let's see where you go with this.
Do you remember how we do it?
It's something about fingers.
Okay. Hold up your hand like this.
Okay.
I'm going to say Never Have I Ever. And if it's something that you've done, you have to put a finger down.
Okay.
Okay,
all right.
You ready?
All right. Is this like a Scouts thing?
Maybe it's just like a way for you to confess to us what you've done and haven't done.
This could be very personal.
Time.
Okay, let's
ready?
Do it.
Never have I ever paid on the first date. Okay.
Paid on the first date? Oh, no, I've done it.
I've
done it. Oh, I have to do this. Okay.
How'd it go, by the way? How'd it work out with the guy that you paid on the first date?
Not great.
Not great, right?
No. Yeah. All right. So,
Tricky.
so don't do this. But yes, I've done it.
Okay. Asked for a raise.
Oh, well, I mean, I've been my own boss for so long. I'm always asking for my own raise. So that means this is yes.
You put another finger down.
I have to put it in.
Yeah.
All
okay.
Right.
So you have asked for a raise.
Of course.
Okay. And explain really quickly, when you're the CEO, who do you ask for a raise?
You have to go to a comp committee. But, that's use data on the board. But you use data.
Yes. Okay. Never have I ever.
Oh, I got to do this, whatever this is. Okay.
Bought a fake bag.
To my knowledge, I have never bought a fake bag. So is this I have to go like that?
Yeah, you put another. Each time you put another one down.
All right.
Never have I ever bought a Birkin.
Oh, I bought one.
Okay. All right.
I bought one.
How many have you bought?
More than one, but then I sold them because I did sell them.
Yeah. Were you not using them?
I wasn't. My problem is handbags to me are utilitarian, and unless you're going out someplace fancy. So I trash bags.
Comfy, right?
Well, and also I trash bags.
Yeah.
So,
Me too.
and I don't like to change bags because then I always forget something. So I'm a bag and shoe trasher. So I felt like I would never trash a Birkin bag. It's too beautiful and they're handmade. And I just sat there in my closet. It made me sad.
I know. I did the same thing. And
And
then
then I
didn't
bought
like
another
it when
one.
I carried it. It felt awkward.
Oh, then I bought more. And then I'm like, what am I doing? And then I'm like, okay, I can't.
Okay. Never have I ever signed a prenup.
Oh, you know what? I haven't. So what does the thumb go
So
in or out?
You keep your hand up?
But should I have? Absolutely. So that was a mistake.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I wouldn't do it again without signing a prenup
So you
if
would
I
only
ever
get
got married again. Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
good to
what
know.
a mistake.
For all of Julie's future potential suitors, just be warned, they're going to have
Well,
to sign a
it's
prenup.
good business.
Yeah,
it's
it
good
is good
business.
business.
It keeps everything clean.
Never have I ever fought with a family member about money.
Oh my God. So that's a yes. So I just thumb go in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Goes in.
Yeah.
Okay. And never have I ever, this is the last one, maxed out my credit cards.
Oh, for when I was doing the RealReal, of course I did.
You
Thumb
did.
in or out. Of course.
Okay, but it turned out to be a good bet.
Well, I not only did I max out my credit cards, I also took down my IRA and 401k. Remember, I didn't get VC funding for a while.
You went all in.
Oh, that's it, babe. You got to do it. And honestly, that turned out.
Yeah, that turned out.
That
That was the
turned out.
understatement of the show. That turned out. It will go down in history. Okay, Julie, we end episodes of Money Rehab by asking guests for one tip that they can take straight to the bank. So it can be about personal finance, investing, anything money related. Your best tip for our audience.
I would say, just first of all, do not let balances go on your credit card. Pay those off. And wait, 2 tips. If you are working in a company that has a 401k or an IRA, put that money in and then forget about it. Let me give you a story, and it's a good story because I told you I really did clean them out, except I had in a small IRA, I had, and by the way, you pay penalties for it. It was grim doing it to start the RealReal. But in a small IRA, I cleaned it all out, and I only had 3 little stocks left. And I think this is started at the beginning of the RealReal, and those 3 stocks were worth, so think 2011, they were worth $12,000. I'm like, okay, I can stop. I don't need that $12,000. Today,
Oh, no. I
they're
know
worth
what's coming.
$150,000 because I didn't look at them. All right, I just left them there, and one of them was Facebook, one of them was Microsoft,
Wow.
and one of them was Netflix.
Okay, so never take your money out of a 401k unless you're going to use it to start a business that eventually becomes a multi-billion dollar company.
Yes. And so, and just, by the way, in case anyone's like, oh my God. Oh, the other thing is, and if you do take a company public, start start actually selling your stock. You need diversity in your assets.
Yes.
And I did that right away. So even though, by the way, the stock has never been as high as when I was CEO. They've never brought it back to that level. Luckily, I had diversified enough that, it feels very, very good. So that's more than one.
Would you ever go back as CEO?
No, they wouldn't want me. You never say never, do you? You never say never. I would say coming back into a company that's been run differently than you may have run it would be a turnaround at that situation. But you never say never.
Never say never. Julie Wainwright, my former competitor and current dear friend, thank you so much for coming to Money Rehab. I had so much fun.
Oh, I hope it's a good one. Thank you,
I think
Tracy.
it's a good one.
I'm
Thank
glad
you,
you
Julie.
know what? I'm glad we became friends.
Me
It's
too.
been delightful.
Me too.
Hi, I have a question. Can I see?
Yeah,
Can I ask you guys?
Do you want me to get up or do you
No,
want me
I want to
share
sit
the
with
chair?
you.
Oh,
I've
yes.
been listening, and you guys did great. The reason that you're co-hosting is because of Baby, but Baby hasn't popped out yet. So, as I was listening, I was just curious because while Julie didn't think about competition when you guys were rivals, what did you think of Julie and the RealReal while you were in the midst of Tradesy?
I did think about competition.
What did you
I did.
think?
I thought, Julie, I thought about you a lot. I even bought a book you wrote a long time
Oh,
ago,
yeah.
and I read it. And many years ago that I bought it and read it. We were, it was my first company. I didn't have a lot of background in business or any background in business, and so once you guys pulled ahead and started growing faster than us, I wanted to know everything about what you were doing and how you were doing it to learn and to catch up. Um, and so, yeah, I thought about your business model all the time. I thought about how you were operating as a CEO. I hired people who had worked for you, and I learned from them about how you operated the company. And I really, I had a combination of like fire to catch up and,
Yeah.
like win the whole market, but also deep admiration and respect because more than anybody, I think I knew how difficult that job was. So,
Well, that's
yeah.
nice. That was a generous thing for her to say.
It's great.
All true.
And a million years ago, Julie, you were also the CEO of Pets.com.
I was.
Which is like the butt of jokes when you think about the .com bubble. How do you feel about that?
How do I feel about that? Well, I actually, it was a little bigger for me. First of all, if let's just go forward, Chewy.com, multi-billion-dollar company. Chewy.com is nothing but Pets.com. They don't do
Always
anything that
timing.
Pets.com didn't do. We just did it 20 years. So I would say, how do I think about timing's everything. So timing's really important. So it was a timing issue. But when I did shut the company down and gave shareholders back their money, I didn't run it to bankruptcy. And sadly, that same day I was shutting down, my husband asked me for a divorce. So it's very emotionally charged for me. But it really is timing's everything. And I also think that, Webvan was the precursor to Instacart. They went through $1 billion worth of capital, a lot more than the RealReal did. Pets.com did. And you never heard about that, did you? Do you think there might have been a little bit of women bashing going on in there? I don't want to
never.
say that. I have been
I've
told
never
that.
heard of it. What?
I have been told that from other press people that if I was a man, I don't know. I'm not a man. I don't know what it would have happened. But look, Pets.com was ahead of its time. And it was not pretty. And I had reporters showing up my house, showing up at my door, knocking to get, and I luckily, after my husband moved out, a good friend moved in and he would answer the door and say, she's not talking to you. And I can call the police because you're on private property now.
And how did you come back from that?
Did you know this story?
I know, but I want everyone to know
How did
this
I
story.
come back? I gave myself 2 years to either start a company myself, I didn't start Pets.com. I was brought in to run it. To start a company myself and make it successful, or I was going to have to leave town and do something else, put my house in the market, sell something, I don't know, go into real estate in Arizona. I didn't know what I was going to do. It was Arizona real estate or become a yoga instructor. And I wouldn't have been good at either of those things. It would have been a nightmare. So that was my plan B. And, when you get older and you start a business and you recognize that a lot of successful businesses started by mostly men that got funding in Silicon Valley, they're smarter than you are. There's nothing more that they're doing except they're doing it and taking the risk. Mm-hmm. And they're persistent. And so, and I figured, well, if I start a great business, I'll get the money. And that's why I waited also for a year. I was afraid before I took VC money. I was really convinced that with Pets.com was still looming large in my past. And no one was going to give me money unless I proved it. In the first year, we did $10 million in revenue for the RealReal. So I knew I had to prove it. And then I would, it's pretty hard to deny a $10 million going toward $25 million the second year. I mean, most companies don't do that, ever. So, so it was a massive milestone in my life. And, is it first child, second?
Yeah.
All right. So also he asked me for a divorce and I was 41. And we had sort of been trying to have kids, but hadn't really. Mm-hmm. And then I had to go through and make that decision. Like, am I going to be, I'm going to be a single mom, what should I do? So it sort of hit at one of those critical. Now, see, men don't think this way, but women have to. You really have to plan out if you really want kids. I had raised my brother in my head, and in reality, I did pretty much have to. My mom had MS when I was a kid, so I was the oldest, so I had a lot of responsibility and felt like in my 20s, I just wanted to have fun because I didn't, I had a lot of responsibility from the age of 8 until I, went out on my own. And so I didn't have this burning need like a lot of people because I felt like I've raised my kids. But then when you're faced with that decision, like, oh my God, I'm 41, I'm 42, going to be 42 soon, not married. What am I going to do? Then you're really up against it. Like I've got, I did check. I still had a few good eggs running around there. Checked with the gynecologist, and I had to make a big decision. And I decided not to consciously be a single mother. And so I made that decision. I would say that was harder than any decision probably ever to really know. And if I'm really honest, has it made me sad? Sure. It's made me sad, but it hasn't made me depressed. It hasn't, it's sort of like, it was a hard decision to make. It was the right one for me at the time, but it didn't come without consequences.
Regret?
No, not regret. I would just say, you don't live that long, and having children is one of those life experiences. And so it's not regret. It's just a little sad, but it's not like, because I know I made the right decision at the right time, but it's a little sad. But, you always have to, when you're choosing a road, you have to leave something behind. And I wouldn't have probably started the RealReal. I wouldn't have done other things I've done in life if I would have had kids. And to be honest, it's hard having kids now. It's hard. It's hard. Close your ears, little baby. You may have a perfect child and have no problems, but you're going to have, you've got it. There are more challenges with social media. There's just more challenges now.
Yeah, because when you hit the stride in your career, as women, men don't think about this. It's also when you hit your biological prime.
And which is without a doubt been researched, and you probably know this, that's when women start losing on the financial curve. And and there are so many reasons, because even though men have gotten much more involved as fathers, it still falls on the woman. And I don't care how old you are, it still falls on the woman, or how young you are. No one's that progressive. And there's always there's always the exception, where the man's doing it, or the man's really 50-50, but that's the exception, not the rule. And so statistically, that's where women lose out. And I would say, if you just talk about being an entrepreneur, that's why you really have to understand your trade-offs and make choices that are aligned with where you are, because you can have it all, but it's a serial experience.
If you decide
It's an asynchronous experience.
What it means. You can have it all if you define what that is.
Yeah, you just have to be comfortable with your choices. And then you have to really know yourself. And that's not easy, It's not easy.
It's not. It's
that's
a
a life journey. That is your life journey, to know yourself.
But you birthed another beautiful baby.
Yes, I'm very happy. And now, and look,
you both had
Ahara
amazing outcomes.
And Ahara Med is really exciting. I mean, look, 40% of the U.S. is considered obese, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular issues, metabolic disorder, neuropathy. Look, I honestly think my father died at 86 of complications from obesity, and it was a terrible death. And I actually think mentally he was great. I think he would have had the last 8 years of his life would have been really, really great if the drugs were there, and he would have taken them. Because he had a heart attack at the age of 72, and instead of taking care of yourself, he actually started gaining 100 pounds. Oh, wow. And I think it was a combination of depression, et cetera, et cetera. But I think he would have had a longer, happier life. or maybe you would have died at 86, but it would have been a more active, fulfilling life.
And so now you're birthing a whole other business,
I know.
baby. Like, you never die, Julie. They can't hold you back.
Well, I mean, come
None
on.
of
What am
this
I going to do
craziness.
with all this energy? What
You're
would you do?
using
What
it. Thank
would
you guys for
do?
letting me crash.